Hello and welcome. We are so glad to have you with us today. How's everybody doing? We're
Great.
doing good. Happy to be here.
Hello.
Awesome.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Saturday. We know that you could literally be anywhere and you are choosing to be here, which really says so much about you. This is our
I
Verizon
don't know.
Skill Forward.
That
So
sounds
if everyone can actually go ahead and mute your microphones, that would be amazing. If you're new with us, I'd love to introduce myself. My name is Carrie Ann, and I'm this project coordinator for Verizon Skill Forward. And while this call is a part of our larger Verizon Skill Forward program, we wanted to open it up to everybody because this topic is so vital to thriving as a human. And if you haven't heard of Skill Forward yet, this program is an upskilling initiative, which essentially means that in partnership with Verizon and edX, we are able to offer you free professional skill building courses in topics like cybersecurity, graphic design, artificial intelligence, data analytics, nutrition, social work, psychology, finance, and so much more. And we know that this might sound too good to be true. We've heard some people say they thought they were getting scammed. However, I want you to know that the Alliance's relationship with Verizon goes way, way back. And Verizon has been a huge supporter of the amazing work that the Alliance is doing through the Family Justice Center movement, Camp Hope America program, the Voices Network, the Training Institute on Strangulation Prevention, Hope-Centered Coaching, domesticshelters.org, and most recently, the Hidden Homicides Project. And trust me that while this opportunity is so good, it is also so true. In the Verizon Skill Forward program, you get access to hundreds of professional skill building courses, as well as over 100 professional certificate programs. And many of these professional certificate programs cost upwards of $1,500, and you have access to them for free. So what this means is that when you use the interest form, which my wonderful project manager, Ashley, is going to share in the chat. She's kind of our Wizard of Oz behind the scenes. You get to create your Skill Forward edX account, and then you have a year to take as many courses as you want. You also have the opportunity to be a part of our private Facebook community and have one-on-one coaching calls with me. If you have questions about this program or you would benefit from seeing the actual learning platform, you are welcome to schedule a Zoom call with me. My scheduler link is in the chat and we can make that happen. The moral of the story is our entire goal in this program is to support you. So we have found that just giving people access to a learning platform is not enough. So we are cheering you on through this whole journey and providing space where you can also cheer others on. Because when we get to see someone else's success, we have two choices. We can either choose to be jealous, or we can choose to see it as a window into what is possible. And I highly encourage you to choose the latter. We are privileged to offer this program to you completely free of charge. So with the courses, plus the coaching, plus informational calls, you are literally getting thousands of dollars of value for nothing. And speaking of money, we're doing something new and I want to share it with you. We just had our first raffle winners yesterday. Every Friday, we are pulling raffle winners for a $500 prize. The way to get an entry is by completing a course on Verizon Skill Forward. So anything other than the orientation course, when you use our interest form, you'll get an email with all of the links you need to get started. And then you're in our database. I want to give a huge congratulations to Kelsey and Anissa, who are both winners of our $500 raffle. Part of our program also includes these deep dives. So last month we talked about goal setting and we touched on the science of hope because it is such an integral part of goal setting, but we also want to dive deeper onto this topic. So today we get to have Casey Gwinn with us. Casey is the president and co-founder of Alliance for Hope International. He also co-wrote the book Hope Rising: How the Science of Hope Can Change Your Life. His work in the domestic violence field has drastically altered the way that our country handles domestic violence. And believe it or not, Casey and I have been working together for over 30 years. What? But you're so young. And that is because Casey is my dad. So from a very young age, our family has been a part of this mission to end domestic violence. Dad, thanks so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you all.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. This topic of hope, we know that this is a gigantic passion of yours, and you have literally written a book on it. And I know that this word, this concept, this science has completely changed your life and changed the way that you lead. It's changed the way that Camp Hope America functions. So I would love for you to share, for those who might not have any idea that hope is a science, can you give us your big overview? What does this mean?
Sure. Well, nice to have you all on. Thanks for those of you turning your cameras on so we can see you. Zoom boxes are not really a relationship, but they're about as good as we can do right now. So it's nice to see your faces as you have gotten involved in this program. Just a quick background. I grew up in a home impacted by generations of domestic violence. My grandfather severely abused both of his wives and all 8 of his kids. I grew up white and male in America, so I grew up with some privilege. I didn't grow up rich. I grew up relatively poor. My dad was a camp director, but I did grow up impacted by abuse. And so for me, the journey into my career as a prosecutor was really driven by quite a bit of anger. When we get robbed of hope in life, lots of times we have like a low-grade fever growing up in an abusive home, growing up with trauma. And I didn't understand the notion of hope. I am a person of faith, so I kind of had this notion that hope was something out there when you die. That's kind of the hope of the future. And in 2012, I met the director of what was then called the Center for Applied Research on Nonprofit Organizations, Chan Hellman. It's now called the Hope Research Center at the University of Oklahoma. And I found out that he was measuring hope, that out of the positive psychology movement had come this notion in the late 1990s, early 2000s from a man named Rick Snyder, that you could measure hope. So he created a scale to measure hope in kids. He created a scale to measure hope in adults. I didn't know any of that. I started reading about it. I had retired by then as a prosecutor in San Diego, but had started Alliance for Hope International. And it became fascinating to me. One, that you could measure it, and two, that you could cultivate it, that you could make conscious choices in your life about goals that you set and the pathways thinking to get to those goals, and that you could actually increase your hope score. And most significantly, that hope predicts well-being after adversity or illness or trauma. So it was just life-changing for me. I started reading everything I could find. It was called Hope Theory in 2012, based on Rick Snyder's Hope Theory and the studies that he had been doing at the University of Kansas. And then as we started talking together, Chan and I decided we were going to write a book. And we looked at 2,000 published studies, and all of them said the same thing. When hope goes up, better things happen in people's lives. And when hope goes down, people struggle more in life. And if hope keeps going up, you start to experience greater well-being. And there isn't a study that says the opposite. Doesn't matter what the adversity is: cancer, domestic violence, sexual assault, trauma, adult victimization, child victimization, refugee trauma, poverty, you name it. Hope predicts well-being in life. And so for me, we just stopped calling it a theory and said this is a science. So when we wrote Hope Rising, it really was the first time in my life that I finally had a definition for hope. So for me, hope has become really about what are the goals that I set in my life, not somebody else's goals for me, not somebody telling me something. My parents would often say, you better do this and you better not do this. And if you did that, I'm ashamed of you for that. Those were not hope-centered statements. Those were my parents trying to make me do certain things or tell me to do certain things. And hope can't be externalized on you. It's got to be your goals. It's got to be your pathways thinking. So that's the beginning of the journey into the science of hope.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. We talked a lot about why in our goal setting call, because you can choose any type of goal, but so much of it for a lot of us, it is externally driven because we want to make this person proud of us, or we want to show so and so that we really can amount to something. But like you said, that's not what's going to actually drive hope. And so we dug deep down into why does this goal matter? Why? And digging deeper and deeper. So I know from our conversations and from Camp Hope work and all of that, these three elements of what are necessary for hope. But can you draw that picture for us? What are the necessary ingredients to bake up some hope?
It's really about three things. It's called agency, which is kind of motivation to pursue goals in your life. It's about goals that you set, your goals for yourself, who you want to be, what you want to do, who you want to love, what you want your life to look like. And then the ability to do what's called the pathways thinking. You can set a goal, like some of us probably just set New Year's resolutions in January. By the way, Quitter's Day on New Year's resolutions is January 12th. It's really an official day where people quit their New Year's resolutions. But New Year's resolutions are us setting a goal. I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. But we don't do the pathways thinking. And we're often not terribly motivated for the goal. And we don't think about what happens if I run into a barrier to that goal. What am I going to do? Or what happens if this happens? So if I set a goal, I want to lose 20 pounds in January. That's a great goal, and I could use losing 20 pounds. But if I go to Costco and I see that chocolate cake at Costco, I'm in trouble. If I haven't done the pathways thinking to think, you know what, I'm walking right by that chocolate cake and I'm going for the protein bars that have some chocolate in them. So that'll be my reward. If I haven't planned that out, I'm taking that chocolate cake home, and I'm not going to lose 20 pounds, and I'm not going to achieve my resolution. So it's got to be a goal I'm motivated to pursue. It's got to be my goal, and I've got to have that ability to do the pathways thinking. And sometimes there's a component called re-goaling. So when I was growing up, I wanted to be a college basketball player. Problem is, I'm 5'10" and I can't really jump, and I'm not that fast. In a tiny little high school, I was a good basketball player. And then I went to college, and there were real basketball players there, and they were really big and really fast. And I couldn't play college. There was no pathway. There was no pathway to that goal. I had to come up with a different goal because I love basketball. So I played intramural basketball. I just played with other people that couldn't play basketball in college. I achieved my goal of playing basketball while in college. It just didn't involve an
I got to let you go
NCAA.
on a training. Okay.
Sorry, Casey, can you unmute yourself? I accidentally muted you.
So really, that's what it's all about, is my goals. And the great thing about hope, and I just want to give you the rest of the definition, it's not just about you. So the scientific definition of hope is that hope is a cognitive belief that your future can be brighter than your past, and that you play a role in making it happen. But when we started applying the science to working with children who are growing up in homes impacted by domestic violence and taking those kids to camp every summer, that adult definition wasn't adequate because it didn't pick up the other side of hope, which is you got to practice cheering for and believing in other people too. It can't just be me, my goals, my pathways, what I want to do, who I want to be. Because if you just obsess over yourself, you're a narcissist. You become completely selfish and self-absorbed, and you might become really powerful in society as a narcissist. You might rise to the top of the heap in business and politics, but you are not a healthy, functional human being. You got to have this balance. And it turns out when you cheer for other people, when you encourage other people, when you believe in other people, you actually release chemicals in your brain that actually cause you to have a better pathway forward to optimism and hope in your own life. So it's got to be this balance. So at camp, we started teaching kids, it's just not about cheering for yourself. It's about cheering for others. And if you have that balance, then you start to experience that exciting concept of hope rising, not only in your life, but in the lives of the people that you're believing in and supporting around you.
Yeah, I love that. So we've got goals at the top, agency and pathway, or willpower and way power. They're kind of the moving towards the pinnacle of the goal. So I love that you talked about the brain chemistry, because this is something that I'm personally super fascinated by. And even from our own body language standpoint, those of us who are highly empathic, we can sense hope or lack thereof, joy or lack thereof from other people merely by an instant of observation. So can you share a little bit more about what is the difference in our bodies and our brains when we are in a place of hope versus what we now know is the opposite of hope as apathy? How does that change even what's going on physiologically?
There's a lot of things that go on in the human body and in the human brain. I will tell you, many years ago, after I retired as a prosecutor, I ran a domestic violence shelter in San Diego. And I'd go onto the floor. I had 90 staff at the YWCA of San Diego County. Our emergency shelter was in the building where I worked. I'd go in the morning. I was the only male on a staff of 90 people. And I would go in, they'd have to announce, man on the floor. And then I'd say to the women in the shelter, do you want to go for a walk today? And the walk was going to be 20 minutes one way and 20 minutes the other. We were basically going to go from downtown San Diego, literally up to Balboa Park, to smell the roses in the rose garden in Balboa Park, and then walk back down to the shelter called Becky's house. And some women would say, I'm not really up for it. I think I'm just going to have a cigarette. And I would say, bring your cigarette with you. We're going to be outside. It's 70 degrees. It's sunny. It's beautiful. Think how good it's going to feel. We'll set a goal. We'll all walk together. We'll laugh. We'll talk. I'll make sure everybody's safe. And then when we come back together, we'll have that celebration of achieving it. 40-minute walk. And some people would go and some people wouldn't. And when we got back, you could tell the difference between the people that went on that walk and the people that didn't. Because the people that didn't go on that walk, their hope score had not changed. They were in the same place. Their physiology had not changed. But the other people that had come back, dopamine and serotonin, things had been released in their body. Adrenaline had been pumping. They'd been breathing. They'd been moving. They'd been talking in relationship with other people. And I guarantee you, in that 40 minutes, the people that stayed in the shelter that day and didn't set that goal, their hope scores were lower and other people's hope scores were higher. And literally that movement of their body and kind of releasing some of the trauma out of their body literally would have changed the chemistry of their brain in that 40 minutes. Now, it doesn't sustain forever. I mean, you can't just take one walk and suddenly you're a high hope person forever. But for that brief moment in time, hope went up and the chemicals that released in the brain, anxiety went down, fear went down, the prefrontal cortex was triggered in the brain. So people were doing more kind of optimistic thinking and goal setting and pathways, a conversation. All of that was happening. And all we did was set a goal to take a walk.
Yeah. So the size of the goal, it sounds like it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Because I think we get so bogged down, especially if you've been in any kind of community that's all like, we can change the world. You start to feel the pressure of that. I remember in my college experience, the university motto was engaging the culture, changing the world. And I'm like, holy cow, that is a very tall order. And as a person who graduated college, not really knowing exactly what I wanted to do, I remember feeling the weight of that. And I wrestled with that a lot until I got to a place of recognizing I don't have to change the world at large to change the world. If I change my own heart and my own experience with others, or if I make a barista smile by asking about how their day was, or what are you up to this weekend, they are a part of the world, and therefore I just changed the world, and it makes it a lot more tangible. So it sounds like the size of the goal, it does not matter. Like,
Well, and
even
if
if it's walk around the block?
absolutely. And if hope goes really low in our lives, and I've been in very dark places in my own life, as I'm sure many of you have been, if hope goes really low in your life, you don't start with big goals. You just can't. It's not even possible. You got to start with little goals. And we say in Hope Rising that hope begets hope, that a goal nurtures a goal. And each time you achieve a goal, however small it is, I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to read 2 pages of a book. I'm going to call a friend for 10 minutes and just encourage her. Whatever that goal is, when you achieve that goal, you realize if I can achieve this goal, I can achieve another goal. So we found this continuum in the research on hope. Here's hope. You're setting goals, you're believing in yourself, you're believing in others, you're cognitively believing that your future can be better than your past. That's hope. And we don't live there all the time. Hope goes like this in everybody's life. We don't live up here. But the closest thing to hope is anger, rage, and frustration. When you have goals, but you can't get there, you don't know how to get there, the pathway is blocked, or something is happening that causes you not to get there. Maybe it's a person that is actually abusing you, or that is causing you to be unable to achieve goals. But we found this. Here's hope, here's rage and anger and frustration. Here's what's called despair. When people have goals, but they literally have no way to get there. They can't figure it out. And desperate people start doing desperate things because you don't know how to get back there. And you said it, Carrie Ann, the opposite of hope is apathy. And when I started Camp Hope, our national camping organization for children impacted by domestic violence 25 years ago, we started planning it. There were just a ton of kids in camp who said, I don't give a shit about anything anymore. I don't care about anything. Nothing matters. Nothing I do. That's apathy. When we started working with survivors of domestic violence, when I was a prosecutor, someone would say, I can't get away from him. I don't know what to do. Like, he's going to kill me. He strangled me. He's taken me to the ground. He suffocated me. Like, no matter what I do, I can't get away. That's apathy. That's getting to a point where you literally can't think of a goal to get out of the situation. You've been robbed of hope in your life. You literally have been robbed of the ability to set your own goals and find your own pathways in life. So we found this continuum in the research, and I realized people kind of go up and down that at times in their life, depending on what they're doing. And then we found this other continuum, which started with clarifying agency at the bottom. Find a goal you care about, find something really small that matters to you, and you start to nurture your way back from apathy. And then as you start to go up that, you got to start practicing this pathways thinking. How am I going to get there? Like, what are the steps? And we found in that pathways process, by the way, nobody does it alone. It's why we have you all invited on this call. We need each other. We need cheerleaders. We need supporters. We need to pathways think with others. We need to brainstorm with others. We need to imagine with others. And then we found, as you started achieving even little goals, hope would beget hope. And the biggest thing we saw in the research on how to nurture hope back, imagination is the pathway to hope. You've got to imagine your life different. What will my life feel like when I do this? What will my life feel like when I can achieve this? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said a long time ago, you got to dream it. Because if you can't dream it, you can't be it. You've got to actually be able to see yourself. I would say to the women in the shelter, when we took a walk, not knowing that this was the science of hope, I would say, think how good it's going to feel when we get back in 40 minutes. We'll laugh and we'll celebrate together. I was causing them to imagine a future success that had not been achieved yet. I didn't know that was hope, but that is hope. The gift that my abusive father gave to me, and because people that are violent or abusive in our lives aren't all bad and they aren't all good. Sometimes there's this mix. My father would say to me, imagine what you can do if you set your mind to this. So he actually nurtured imagination in me growing up, even though he was also my abuser. And so it got really complicated in my life as I started processing all of that. But imagination is the pathway to hope. And if we can't imagine it, little goals we start, and then we imagine what our life can be. I just got a text message from a young woman who, when she was 13, she was too scared at Camp Hope to go rafting. And we sat on the side of the river because she got out of the boat. She didn't want to go through this really bad rapid. And we sat there and we imagined what her life would be like if she became a doctor, because she wanted to become a doctor someday, a heart doctor. And we just imagined. I didn't know that was the science of hope. Ruby, imagine what it'll be like when you go to college, when you make friends, when you get to medical school. She just started medical school at the University of California, San Diego. Ruby Rios is going to be a cardiac surgeon. She is
I remember
make
her.
It. And she, and it started with, we were just imagining while she was too scared to go on the river, because that's fine. Camp Hope is a challenge by choice thing. And if you don't want to do it, you don't do it. And she didn't want to do it, but man, she could imagine what it would be like someday when she wore a white coat in a hospital, and it's going to happen. But she had to imagine it for a long time before it happened.
I love that. And I actually remember her from camp years and years and years ago. That it makes me tear up thinking about that. What I'm hearing is that there are moments, and maybe all of the moments of apathy are moments from which we are not capable of breaking ourselves free of that. It's possible that we can't do that on our own. And no matter how many, affirmations and good nervous system, whatever we have, we cannot do that on our own. And so for everyone on this call and those in our Verizon Skill Forward program, I want you all to hear that this is the goal of what we are doing, is that when we are able to offer the tiniest bit of hope to someone else and help them imagine, they become a hope giver for someone else. And the thing that strikes me so much, Dad, is that we live in a world that is kind of inherently hope sucking. And even, in 2000, I think you said 13, when you were sitting by the river with Ruby, campers were not allowed to have phones at camp. So, and the smartphones weren't as much of a thing back then anyways. Now we have these addictive devices that are socially acceptable, socially required to be functioning in this world. I mean, I could give a TED talk on how unhealthy it is, but we have these soul suckers and these hope suckers. And sometimes for so many on this call, it is people, but it also is the way that the world is. And the messages that we're being given are that we don't have a lot of control over our lives, and kind of this life is happening to you sort of energy. So I hear that in order to make space to imagine, we've got to break some addictions to some of these socially acceptable substances, because you can fill your whole entire life with noise and then you will never have the space to imagine. And what I love about that, and I love about neuroplasticity, is that the confirmation bias. Like when we start to think something, our brain just wants to know what's true. So we're going to be looking anywhere and everywhere. Just our brain naturally does this to confirm what we believe is true. So that practice with Ruby, her brain began to look for reasons that she actually was capable of going to med school. And now she is in that place. Like, that is wild. I would love to hear you share a little bit about the idea of hope as rebellion. We are not living in a hope-filled world. So what does it look like to be a hope rebellion?
So I'd like to make a couple comments about that. One, we are in a time in the world, especially in politics in the United States, and I work in the feminist battered women's movement. I work with a ton of leaders who are trying to address sexual and domestic violence in this country. I work with a lot of organizations to get federal grants, and right now, this whole kind of how the federal government's going to operate is in absolute chaos. And people are really angry. Like they're posting, I have friends posting on LinkedIn, posting on Instagram, Twitter, everywhere, just crazy stuff, just raging. So remember that anger and rage is not hope. And if you live with your amygdala firing, the fear center, emotion center of your brain all the time, and you're always amped up and you're so mad, and you're getting all wound up about something you have no control over at all, I'm sorry, but you are not going to get to control what happens in the politics of America for the next few years. It's going to be a crazy journey. So for me, the hope rebellion, or the notion of hope being your response to a world you cannot control, is to stay with things you can control. Because if I have no control over something, there is no hope. I could be optimistic. Optimism is different than hope. Optimism can happen in the neural pathways of our brain. Some people are more optimistic than other people, and we can develop neural pathways that I think the future is going to be better. I think everything is going to be great someday. That's optimism. Usually has no goals attached to it. Whoops. Usually has no goals attached to it. Because if I set a goal and there's no pathway, that's not hope. I've got to have a goal that I have control over. So I set a goal this weekend that I was not going to watch the news. I'm not watching the news all weekend. I'm just not going to do it, because it just agitates me and it makes me anxious and it makes me upset. And I was a politician. I mean, I was an elected official. I was an elected prosecutor in San Diego as part of my career. So I know politics. I've done the political thing. I just needed a break. I just cannot do it. It is not a hope-centered activity. So for me, if you want to be counterculture in what's going on, you got to be an encourager to other people. And you got to practice that in your own life. And you got to ask yourself, what's the tape that plays in my head every day? And you just talked, Carrie Ann, about neural pathways and neuroplasticity. When we get into darker places in our life, we play tapes in our head. And the tapes that play in our head very often connect to other people that have impacted us, that have hurt us. It might be my father saying, I'm ashamed of you. I am just ashamed of you. And you should be ashamed of yourself. So that tape plays in my head, and you've got to replace that tape with a different neural process. That's why in Camp Hope, we have these affirmations that kids literally memorize and chant every day at camp. When we do survivor retreats for survivors of domestic and sexual violence at a retreat center we have now in Colorado, we practice affirmations together. I can do this. I can achieve something. My future can be brighter than my past. My past does not define me. My light can be inspiring to others, even if it's not always bright. I mean, we've come up with all kinds of things for that process of practicing different processes in my neural pathways of my brain. So when I say, I like the phrase hope rebellion, I just don't want it to be about anger, because anger doesn't get you to hope.
Absolutely. I just more mean like it's such a countercultural way to live.
It is.
Because even in relationship with other people, gosh, I remember this so vividly from high school. I was on the water polo team, but if I wanted to be on varsity, then I also had to swim on the swim team. And that was just like the most boring thing in the world. And I hated just chasing that line up and down. So the way that we would bond on our team we would just be like, oh, swimming sucks. I have to do butterfly in the meet. And there was so much camaraderie around this negativity. And that is absolutely the way that our world is. It's so much easier to pit ourselves with other people against them instead of seeing hope and humanity and offering that to anyone. When you meet people like that, it kind of takes you aback because it is so countercultural.
Well, and there's a couple things about that positive negative thing that's really important. So in our research, we found that when people are lower in hope, they tend to set what we call avoidance or negative goals more often than positive goals. So a lower hope person might say, I'm not going to drink too much this weekend. That's a negative goal. You're trying to avoid a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad goal. It's just a negative goal. And a lower hope person will set more of a negative goal, or what we call an avoidance goal. What I call a positive goal would be, I'm going to do other stuff this weekend. I'm going to have fun with friends. I'm going to go out and take a hike. That would be a positive goal. Now, the result of that is I'm probably not going to use a substance, or I'm probably less likely to do whatever I might be doing that's negative for me, because I'm doing these positive things over here. But that negative goaling is definitely a sign of lower hope. And we all have it. I mean, hope goes like this, remember? So when you're in a dark place, you're probably more likely to set what are called avoidance goals or negative goals. But the other thing that's really important in this is that when you get to that place where you can realize I'm in a pretty low place when it comes to some of this goal setting that I'm doing, you can still set negative goals and it produces a positive result. So if I say I'm going to avoid talking to this person, or I'm going to stay away from my phone and not get the text message from this crazy individual, maybe that I was in a relationship that's driving me nuts because he continues to text me terrible stuff, I'm just not going to look at that. That's a negative goal. But it is going to produce a positive result, which is for 2 days, I'm going to be free of those messages. I'm turning off my phone. I'm not doing that. And it will produce a positive result. So I do think the positive negative thing is really interesting in the research. I will pick up one last thing, Carrie Ann, and that is when I talk to people who are really in low places in their life, and this has been true for me, we blame other people for our problems. So do you know what they did to me? I just spoke at a conference that really was looking at the whole issue of systemic and structural racism in America. It's a real thing. It happens in systems. And I was talking to an individual who said, those people did this to me, and those people, and they did that. They made it impossible for me to do anything in my life. It's like, okay, so that's a really low hope, dark place, because there's tons of people of color that do just fine in life. And they're very successful, and they navigate through adversity and trauma and racism and all kinds of things. But for him, he got to such a dark place that all he could do was spend his time blaming other people for it. And that's not a pathway to hope. Soon, and I said to him, I said, I am so sorry that that stuff happened to you, but sooner or later, when you're ready, you got to set a goal. And it's got to be your goal, and it's got to go forward, because trauma always looks backwards in life and hope always looks forward in life. So sooner or later, you got to make a choice to not keep looking backward, but to start going forward. And I think that's what Verizon Skill Forward is all about. I mean, I think people that are joining this program will do better if they can start that process toward looking forward. I know when I get stuck in the past, I'm usually not in a very healthy place in my life. And when I start turning this way, I think hope starts going up even in my life.
I think there's so much of a need for self-compassion in those moments to validate whatever the pain is that has been there, and to just sit with self. And I love to do a hand on the chest, because I think it's just such a loving touch to myself to say, that was really hard. I did the best I could with the resources I had, financially, physically, emotionally, and I'm going to choose that from now on, I am going to take charge. I wasn't able to in that season, and I'm not going to shame myself for that, but this is the moment that I'm starting to change that. I'm grabbing the reins. But without self-compassion and without really a container for that pain, it does live there. And we have talked so much about how the body keeps the score, to use Bessel van der Kolk's book title, how our bodies are hanging on to this trauma. And I know in Hope Rising, you talk about somatic experiencing and some of the physical practices that people can do to get this out. And I kind of want to put you on the spot here, because I know that I think all of us, we're all going to be carrying this pain in different ways in our lives that we've experienced. And it's in some seasons going to feel very heavy. And in some seasons, it's going to be a little bit lighter. But I don't know that it ever fully leaves. We just get better at holding it. And I'm curious, do you have any practices in your own life that you use to help offload stress, pain, etc.? What would you say are your favorite tactics?
Well, I'm a person of faith, so prayer, what people would call meditation, is definitely one of those. I use a Pandora station called David Nevu. David Nevu is a classical musician, and yesterday I turned it on for 2 hours, and I just literally sat in a chair and listened to David Nevu. Some of it is our hymns, but he has a lot of eclectic people that play on his station. For me, that's positive. I've got to get trauma out of my body, so I exercise a lot. I have a lot of chronic pain in my body, as you do, but I still have to keep moving, because if I don't get it out, and I'm a sucker. I'll just suck it in. I'll just hold it in. So for me, that's been a really important one in my life. I will say that the more that I have practiced what is in Hope Rising, positive statements, affirming statements, and some people would call it journaling. I'm a writer. I've written 12 books. So I write. Writing for me is a way to get it out. When we do survivor retreats, the survivors that often do most journaling, I usually say to them, you should write a book. And 4 or 5 of them from our last retreat are currently writing a book, because they were journaling so much, because journaling for them was this kind of pathway to release stuff from their past in their life. But I will say, Carrie Ann, I just want to emphasize for those that are kind of learning about the science of hope for the first time, I just want to emphasize what you just said, which is it never all goes away, and it's okay. The difference between trauma being in the driver's seat of your life and trauma being in the trunk is what we're talking about. I mean, I still trigger at times from things that happened to me as a kid. things that my father did to me. I triggered on a trip not too long ago. I was in the back seat of a car. I can't be in the back seat of a car. Bad things happened to me in the back seat of a car. And I literally had to ask them to pull over so I could get out of the back seat of the car and sit in the front seat of the car. I just couldn't do it. It's still there. Here I am. I'm 64 years old. I haven't experienced physical abuse since I was a child. And there I was. And I had to get out of the back seat of the car because I was flipping out from a memory that triggered me from, once 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 years old, my father would reach back and hit me in the car. And so it doesn't ever leave. I think there's this sense with some people that I've got to get it's going to go away. Like it's never coming back. It's just going to be gone forever. I wish that was true in my life. It just isn't. You're right. That comment in the text there, our cells hold memories. I totally believe that's true. So for us, I think the journey is how you get it out of the driver's seat. If you're driving facing backwards, your life doesn't usually go very well. I mean, there's a reason that we only have a small window in the back and a big window in the front of cars, because you're supposed to be going this way and you're supposed to be looking this way. And if you ever try driving a car backwards for very long, it doesn't go
Very hard.
So for me, I think that's the piece that's been most kind of, I guess, good for me, is acknowledging that I'm still a work in progress and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, and I'm not going to always just be going forward. When our organization shifted from this focus on kind of what we call trauma-informed work, which we're very supportive of, to this notion of hope-centered work, there were people on my staff that were like, you got to be happy all the time. You got to be positive all the time. We're so sick of talking about hope, 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 hope all the time. Well, they didn't understand the science of it. And they thought that somehow this becomes some false narrative you create for yourself. So you're just happy and positive all the time. I don't know very many people like that, and I'm not one.
Yeah. And I mean, I think for any of us, when I can even think of one person off the top of my head in my life where terribly painful things have happened to her, but there's no acknowledgement and sitting with it. And so then in relationship, when everyone in the world has experienced pain and trauma in some way, and I think especially post-COVID, when there's not that ability to hold space for the hard, but also hold hope for the future, and it's only woo woo, yay, everything's great, it feels bad. It makes us feel like, oh gosh, there must be something wrong with me that I still feel the heaviness and the pain of what I've experienced. And, I was thinking as you were sharing about your experience with being in the back of the car, our brains do so much. But when we have that moment that's even remotely similar to a traumatic experience that has not been filed into long-term memory, it's sitting at the front of the brain in short-term memory. So anything that comes up that's remotely similar, our whole entire system is like, oh no, it's happening again. And that's such a terrible place to be. And so for those listening that have also had that experience, EMDR is an amazing resource for that, because it's rapid eye movement, both sides of the brain being activated to file that type of thing further back, and even things that are free like bilateral stimulation. These are things I've done this in Chick-fil-A with my own child when I was like, I'm going to have a panic attack right now, and I'm going to tap in Chick-fil-A, and to move through those bits and be able to hold space for the hardness of it and know this is not always going to be as hard as it is, but it's really hard right now, and I can move forward from this. And I know that we changed the Camp Hope America curriculum way back when. For those who don't know, the OG San Diego Camp Hope program, we would look at specific character traits, right? It would be, we're talking about compassion or generosity, and we changed the entire curriculum because we were working with kids recognizing, oh my gosh, they don't even believe that they're worthy of love. They don't even believe that they're capable of anything. And in my calls with a lot of our Verizon Skill Forward learners, I have found that a lot of us are in that space too, of we're working on even just believing that we're capable of the goals. So I would love to hear, can goal setting come first, or does affirmation and self-belief, even if it's just an affirmation we don't yet believe, which is the chicken and which is the egg?
Well, I'll bet you all have experiences you could share. We've got so many people on this call, so it's hard for everybody to be able to talk, but I'll bet you could all find situations where sometimes it's one and sometimes it's the other. I actually don't think it's one or the other. I think it depends on the situation. I've seen survivors of severe trauma just realize in the grit of their life one day they got to set a goal, and they're lonely and they have nobody cheering for them, and they just realize I'm going to destroy myself if I don't do this, or I'm going to let this person destroy my life, literally kill me if I don't do this. And they just have to make it happen. And then there are other times I feel like when we need somebody else to come and cheer for us. Mother Teresa always said, no matter how dark it gets, we must give hope, always hope. And she knew that she was offering hope to people at times that didn't have any. And she couldn't wait around for them to, hold their boots up by the bootstraps and figure it out and gut it out all by themselves. One of the things that's interesting, even with Angela Duckworth's work on grit, and grit is that's grit. I actually don't think that's the most transformative character trait. I mean, she's got a New York Times bestseller. It's great. But at the end of the day, hope predicts well-being way more than grit, because grit can't sustain itself without other people in your life. So some of when we picked, when Verizon reached out to us and said, we'd like you to put out this code for these free courses, Carrie Ann was the first one we reached out to because she used to run Camp Hope America for us. And Ashley, who runs domesticshelters.org for us, and Gail Strack, our CEO, and I, we all just said, it's Carrie Ann. It's got to be Carrie Ann, because she knows that that hope's a team sport. She knows that we can't just send out a code and say, go finish a course. It's free. Good luck. If you don't have a team around you. Nobody sustains high hope in their life all by themselves. And when we, in our family justice centers, a survivor will come in so beaten down by a violent, abusive partner. And if you say to her, hey, here's a course you can take, there's so much need to be supported and cheered for by other people. So for us, hope is a team sport, and you got to have both. You got to have those positive people around you that can help challenge your negative narrative in your head. They can help you kind of replace that narrative. And I think you've got to have people that are willing to say, this is about you, your goals, not my goals for you. My biggest complaint in the domestic violence movement in America is the child welfare system says, you better do this or you better do that, or we're going to take your kids away. That is the absolute antithesis of hope, because this person is already in an abusive relationship. They're struggling to protect themselves and their kids. And then another powerful entity, not their abuser, but a system comes in and says, you better do this or you better do that, or we're taking your kids away. And I just spoke at a child welfare conference. I said, the reason you fail in everything you do in much of child welfare is because you're not helping people set their own goals and then coming alongside and cheering for them in that process. So I'm excited, Carrie Ann, about this. I know we've talked a fair amount, and I know we've got a lot of people that come processing here, but I'm excited for all of you that have joined this little cohort here, because you need each other, and you need other people in your life that are going to cheer for you in this process. Just finishing a course is not the goal. The real goal is that you find a pathway forward to a better job, to a better set of skills that you can make a living wage from if you're not, or retool in order to get to the skills that you need. It's the pathways work. You can set a goal. I want a better job. I want a better health insurance. But the pathway can be education. The pathway can be a certificate course from Harvard University or IBM or Apple, whoever else is available on this EDX platform. So for me, Carrie Ann, I just want to say thanks for the willingness to lean into this to try to create a community, because there is something called collective hope in our research. So if one person's hope score goes up, that's good for that person. But if 100 people have their hope score going up and they're supporting each other, collective hope is way more powerful than individual hope. When Margaret Mead said the only thing that really changes the world is a group of committed people that share a vision and achieve it, that's collective hope. And we can actually measure it. We're actually measuring hope in some communities in America now. And when some people have their hope goes up, that great. But when hundreds of people in a community have hope go up in their life, it's way more powerful.
Absolutely. That's it. That's a great segue. Ashley, would you grab hopescore.com and put it in the chat for people? If you are curious about your own hope score, you want to learn more about this, learn more about the specific elements of hope, where yours might be a little lower or higher, this is a great place to start. You'll just take a little quiz that takes literally 3 minutes, and then it'll send you an email with your results as well as show you right then. But that's a great place to start. And Dad, thanks so much for joining us today. We have a few more minutes that I want to open it up to questions. If anyone has them, you can type them in the chat. And Ashley, if questions have already arisen, I would love for you to hop on and let us know what they are.
So I don't have any specific questions yet, but I did want to just share, it was more of a statement that I think could be spoken to a little bit more. It's my biggest issue is that I'm always able to motivate and support others, but not myself. I'm my biggest critic.
Yes, this is so hard. Dad, I wonder if you have thoughts that you want to speak to that statement.
It's that neural pathways process. So if you become your biggest critic, I don't know the journey, I don't know where it comes from, but it came from somewhere. It's a process that's probably reinforced itself over time. So when I meet somebody who's got a lot of negative self-talk and I can't do it and I'm a loser and I fail at this and I do that, but I'm great at cheering for others, there's a process somewhere in that background. And part of that is that, I mean, hope is a verb. Hope is a verb. It's an action word. So you can't just sit around and have higher hope. You literally have to set goals about how you're going to replace that talk in your head. You literally have to say it out loud over and over and over again, because it's like muscle memory. If I'm playing some sport and I keep doing the same thing wrong over and over and over again, I'm going to get the same result. And then my muscles get used to doing that same thing over and over again badly, and I fail at it. And then I think I can't do it because I keep failing at it. I literally have to try something else. And I have to practice it over and over and over again in order to change that process. So good job being affirming, because affirmation is such a gift to other human beings. We just call it the ultimate hope giving, to cheer for somebody else, to support them, to encourage them. But you're going to be way more powerful as a hope giver if you haven't. Brene Brown said it in a different context: you cannot give what you do not have. And so you do have to nurture hope in your own life, even if it starts with that, addressing that tape that plays in your head.
And I will add that external storage from a brain standpoint is ideal here. So when you are in crisis, you cannot expect yourself to think, okay, the world's falling apart, but I'm going to be okay and things are going to be great. You will never come to that conclusion when you are in the place of crisis. So when you are not in crisis, this is what I recommend to people to do. Write down every terrible thing you have ever believed about yourself, every lie that someone's spoken over you, things you hope aren't true. And then on the other side of the paper, you write down what the opposite of that is. If it's, I'm not worthy of being loved, then what's going on the other side? I am worthy of being loved. I'll never amount to anything. I'm smart enough to succeed. And you write those things down and you read them and you read them. And it literally does not matter a shred if you don't believe that when you are first reading it. You keep reading it over and over and over again. And that neural pathway gets built, and then your brain starts looking for all the reasons that you are lovable and that you are smart enough and that you are capable. But writing it down is, research has shown that is the most effective way to build that new neural pathway. And I agree with Casey that you become a better cheerleader when it's from a place of, I believe that all humans are capable, not just everybody else except for me.
Hey, Carrie Ann, Jill put a good question in there. Have you envisioned a way that small groups can meet regularly and support one another through completing the goals?
Yes, we do have a cohort option where our learners can opt into being in a smaller cohort in Telegram, and it's a place where people can share more about their personal journey, share wins, etc. So if there are people who want to opt into that, you can email me personally. My email is skillforward@allianceforhope.com, and I would love to get you connected to a cohort, because as wonderful as these big meetings are, there is so much more power in being in a smaller group, getting to know each other, etc. So yes. Do we have any other questions popping up?
A lot of thank you. And I don't know if you've been reading the chat as we go along, a lot of great feedback. I think this has been a really great conversation. I think I'm going to replay this for myself every Monday, the rest of the month. It's just been really helpful for me as well. And that we get to work together all the time and we have conversations like these, but it's a great reminder. Yeah, what a great way to spend an hour on a Saturday. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. And Ashley, will you actually do our raffle?
Yes,
So a big part of our program, and I know I shared the $500 raffle thing, but we know that making change is really hard. And we know that for most people who are joining us in this program, life might feel a little tumultuous and crazy right now. And so we want to do everything we can to reward you for showing up. And obviously you get to walk away with this amazing content and inspiration and hope embodied, but we also are going to raffle off a $100 Amazon gift card. So Ashley's going to tell us who our winner is.
All right. So everyone that was here today was entered. I was taking care of this while we were chatting and getting all this great information. And I did a random number generator. And the winner is, drum roll please, Latasha Adams.
Woo, Latasha! Congratulations!
We have your email address because you registered. So Carrie Ann is going to get in touch with you and get that in your inbox.
Absolutely. And my challenge to you, because so many people in our program and likely on this call are helpers, my challenge to you is to use this gift card. If you need to use it for essentials, that's fine. But I dare you to get something for yourself, just because, something that's going to bring a little joy, bring a little glimmer, because you are absolutely worth that. Thank you all so much for being here today. And Dad, thanks so much for joining us and just sharing your passion and your knowledge and expertise. And for those listening, we're so glad you were here. We trust, not hope, because I don't have control over your outcome. We trust that you will walk away from this conversation feeling inspired to keep pursuing hope in your life and also inspiring it in the lives of the people that you are around, because that is the way that we change the world. All right, make it a great day and we will see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, friends. Thanks for being with us today.